Trina is a published author, having written a book in 2018 with the intriguing title Deadlier Than the Male. The book explores the power and influence of the wives of leading commanders in British military history. Trina also writes Christian meditations and reflections, as well as being a keen member of a Know Your Bible study group. We're here today to uncover another interesting layer of the lady who is Trina Beckett. Let's go and take a look. Good morning. Hi.
Come in.
Thank you.
Lovely day.
Beautiful day, and what a spot.
I know.
It's stunning outside.
Oh, come on through.
Thank you. So Trina, thank you for inviting us round.
Oh, it's okay.
We've come to look at houses, in particular dolls' houses. Show us, how did it all start?
Well, it was very simple and very basic, really. With one of my dad's old shirt boxes. I think I was about 3 when I was doing all this stuff.
Oh my goodness, and you've kept it all this time.
Yeah, a couple of little rather rough-looking little mice, and this one, which I'm definitely not going to show our cat.
No.
But my mum used to help me scribble things, might make a little oven and all sorts of things, but that was where I thought making things small is great.
This is amazing. You've kept this for a good few years.
Yeah, I've kept it for about 66 years, yeah.
Okay, so it started here.
Yeah.
You moved from shirt boxes.
Yeah.
Where did we go next?
My dad was really good at making things, so he was making me a doll's house. I didn't know, but on Christmas Eve I crept downstairs for a drink of water, and as I peeped through the door I could see him. It doesn't look like it did then, but he was making this doll's house for me. He was ruling, it was red, the roof, then he was ruling lines on it for tiles, and so I thought, I don't want to spoil the surprise, so I crept back upstairs without my drink of water and waited till the next morning, when I was absolutely thrilled to bits. And I didn't have to pretend to be pleased, because I really was pleased.
Sure.
But it didn't look like that then, but I played with it, my sister played with it, my niece played with it, my children played with it, my grandchildren played with it, and then finally, after we'd moved here in the last 20 years, I claimed it back and put another roof on it and put little pebbles, little tiled pebbles on the door. It's now a fisherman's cottage, and it's got all sorts of things in it, as you can see.
This is incredible. So let's just have a little look. We've got an upstairs bedroom and a little hobby room.
A little hobby room, and the embroidery there is one I did, a cross-stitch one. It was a house we had once called Moat House. It wasn't as grand as it sounds.
And a fantastic kitchen in here. So this is based on a room that was in your parents' house?
It is, and it wasn't by the sea, it was right in the Midlands in Wolverhampton, so no sea view from there. Then my mum-in-law knitted this thing. I don't do any miniature knitting, but she knitted that.
And this amazes me, because it makes absolute obvious sense that you have to be able to knit in miniature.
Well, I can't, but she can. And it's 12 scale knitting. She did it on darning needles. She's made lots of lovely things, as most of my family have made things for the dolls' houses. So they're all very special. And I'm a great lover of crab, so the Doll's House Fair, I bought that one.
A little basket of
vegetables, yes, the pumpkins.
Pumpkins down there. It's obviously October time in this house. This is the house by the sea.
Yeah.
Where do we go next?
Used to play with my daughter's doll's house when she was at school.
Okay.
I'd move things I thought looked better. And she'd say, Mum, why don't you get your own? And I didn't think adults had them, actually, then. But then I was to discover the world of dolls' houses that weren't for children. So for Christmas, Ian bought me this one. There's always a bit of a story behind my dolls' houses. And this one is really pretty much based around this little girl called Lynette. And that was based on this book that my mum read to me. It was her book when she was little, An Everyday Angel. And it's about a little girl in the World War I that goes to stay as a help. She's a poor little girl, and she goes to help in a big rich house and helps with a little child there that's ill. And it's a Christian story. Quite unhappy because she misses her sort of her simple, loving home. So that's the basis of this one, really. Looking at it now, with my eyes as they are now, I wonder how I ever did it. But there's a lot of very personal things in there. Oh, I'll tell you about this. You probably won't be able to see it, but I'll just get it off. My husband is a very keen miniature historian, and he's very keen on little soldiers. So that was a nod to him.
Oh, wow.
And again, these curtains were made from material left over that my mum-in-law had made for a blouse for herself. She made this lovely coat and some hats. So most of the fabrics are from dresses I wore when I was little or my children wore. So it's all linked in somehow to the family. It's not a particular era, but if I like something, it goes in the doll's house. There are purists who stick to a period and say, oh, they didn't have those in those days. They probably didn't have baths and toilets, but they do in my house.
So what's this one called?
It's called Banjo Manor.
Banjo Manor.
Because one Christmas, I play the guitar a bit, and I'd always fancied playing the banjo, so Ian bought me a banjo. I could not master it, so I said, can I swap this banjo for Doll's House? He said, I don't think you come from the same shop, but we did that. I took the banjo back and got a refund, and then that's when we went up to London to buy this, so it's called Banjo Manor.
That is very fitting. Okay, so we're going to leave Banjo Manor.
Yeah.
And we are going to go to your next house.
The main one.
Main one.
Rosbeck.
Rosbeck House.
Gordon Rossiter made it, and our name's Beckett, so that's the link for that.
So, this is Rosbeck Manor.
It is, yeah.
Tell us about this.
Well, the story behind it actually is that it's a Tudor house, but I don't really like Tudor furniture. It's a bit sparse and clunky. So it's sort of Edwardian, and the people that live here are trying to keep it in the family by running it as a tea room, which you'll see in a minute. But this is just the main bit of the house. And there's various things made. My dad made this grandfather clock. There's a little watch in there. It's not working at the moment because it needs a battery, but carpets, I think pretty much all the carpets apart from that one, I did make for this house. And my mum-in-law did the embroidery at the back there, that beautiful bed.
There's a little bit of a mixture here between items that you've purchased and items that you have made.
Yeah.
So show us something in here that you have made.
This chair, like a settle type chair, which you undo knots at the back and it sort of folds out. It's a lovely hobby because you can do what you like.
Absolutely.
Whatever mood you're in.
You're a woodworker, a needleworker.
This is the tea room, and there's lots of things I've made in here. Most of the food in there I've made out of Fimo. So that would probably take about 2 or 3 evenings to make that with all the, instead of watching the television. You do actually put it in the oven to bake, which you don't usually do with a trifle.
It's so tiny, it's so intricate, but it looks so realistic.
It's always 12th scale, doll's houses. You get patterns for miniature dresses. And at the back there, if you can see the photographs of 2 girls, that's my granddaughters dressed up in Tudor costumes at one National Trust places where they let children do that.
I think there's something hidden under the roof.
Actually, yes.
There's more, isn't there? Wow!
And this just gave me, when I'd finished this bit, I was quite sad I hadn't got any more to do. So there we are. This is my sea captain's room, Bradley Sockins, and he's the only doll made from scratch.
He's a traveller.
He is.
He's a little bit like you. You've travelled quite widely, haven't you?
We have, thanks to Ian's work, yes. Yeah. People make books. This is Christmas Carol, one of my favourite stories, and this is the Bible. And I think it's pretty much all in there.
Wow!
I mean, it's just amazing. You'd need more than a microscope to look at that, really. And this is the writer's room.
This is quite personal. This is your room.
That was something that my mum and dad had a little miniature on the shelf in our living room. So when I look at that, I'm transported back to there. That little clock here was made from a watch of mine. My father fashioned a little case from it.
It really is amazing.
I'm not going to have it forever. It's something, again, that I'm learning to hold more loosely because it's such a big part of my life, and I know that someone else will enjoy it one day. But it's just letting go of these things, and because I don't need to be sad because, I've got an eternal home and a mansion made by Jesus.
Absolutely.
So, top that.
Yeah. But there are some lovely memories and the history behind these things, important to pass it on so that people know the full story behind it so they can appreciate it too. Where do we go from here?
Well, but these are very special because they're miniature replicas of my children's bedrooms when they were little. And so in here is everything that he ever had as a child, really, that he liked, like Gordon the Gopher and the Wolves football team, and it looks like him. And that was the top of like a medicine bottle. You unscrew it and you've got this lovely ready-made sort of whizzy wheel track. So that reflects much of his childhood. And talking about fiddly things, they're all fiddly things in here. I think that shelf of Andrea's foreign dolls is one of the most fiddly things I've ever done, because there were so many of them, and I did try and reproduce each of them in a way that has a meaning. And the game she used to play with a little fashion wheel, and this shop, my dad made a shop, so that's also, I suppose, because the shop would have been 12 scale, so that's 144 scale, as is the theatre. So the children were involved with all these things as they were growing up, helping and seeing what Mummy had done while they were at school. These are very special, because I think I'll probably always have room for those.
I think you probably
Could even put them on the wall if you wanted, couldn't you? So, But I'm not, I don't have sadness when I look at these. I just be very grateful that I had such a happy time, as a mum.
Absolutely.
I think that's, again, all started when the proper happy time was when I did have that connection with our wonderful God, my Creator.
Trina, thank you so much for welcoming us into your home and for showing us around these beautiful dolls' houses, which really are quite breathtaking. Before we go any further, just tell me about Bradley Sockins. I'm intrigued by the character that lives in the attic of Rosbeck House. Tell me the story behind that.
Well, poor old Bradley. I couldn't find a sea captain anywhere, and I decided it was the only doll I've ever made completely from scratch. So I got the lump of fire and fashioned this gnarled old face. And somewhere in Ian's sock drawer, there is now an odd sock, because I couldn't knit that small. So that's his jumper, and he is the sea captain, and he's got a pipe, and everywhere he goes, he brings something back. So yeah, he's a great character.
Amazing. Okay, so you've created these fascinating miniature worlds and characters, but unlike us and our Creator God, there's no interaction between you and Bradley Sockins. He can't talk back to you, although I'm sure that you probably have a connection with Bradley Sockins because you have made him. How important is the connection between you and your Creator God?
Well, right now, it's everything in the world to me, but I can't think of anything of more value in my life. But that wasn't always the case. God worked absolutely tirelessly, and at times painfully, from my point of view, for me to even want to establish a connection with him. And during those painful times, I was very resentful and hated them. And they got in the way of everything I wanted to do. I was writing a book at the time. My miniatures, I couldn't do any of those. Couldn't even take relief from television, but not that there's a lot of relief in television. So my world sort of fell apart, really, I think. So looking back now to how I feel, in retrospect, those painful times were God's building blocks for me. That was a time when my Creator had a really, determined bash at making me connect with him. It took him a long time, but it was through those building blocks, those painful building blocks, that I came to know him. I'll explain a bit later how that finally happened, but so that's the situation now. Praise his name for that.
You have a strong connection with your Creator.
Only because he instigated it. I didn't want it. I didn't even know I needed it. But it's all his glory. And I know that he does that with all of us.
He has to, doesn't he? Because our hearts aren't naturally tuned towards him. That's brilliant. Rosbeck House, when I look at it, your little created worlds are almost perfect, aren't they? Yeah. But your little characters, they don't have the pressures of life. It's not real. They don't know what it is to be abandoned. They don't know persecution, all those things that the Apostle Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. They don't know illness, grief, and they don't have to deal with loss like we do. And these things, they do threaten to overwhelm us in life, don't they? Is there a time in life which you're happy to share with us when you perhaps felt overwhelmed and all those things just crowded in?
Yes, over and above all others, there is one time, I suppose quite a lengthy period really, when I felt really overwhelmed. I was trying to deal with it by being stoic about it, but stoicism isn't, it's it just denies and it hardens and there's no comfort in it at all. So it's just something that you grit your teeth and you bear it. And that's what happened to me. That when I started writing my book, things were fine. I got in about 18 months into it and I'd done a couple of research and the 2 draft chapters. And then gradually, but quite quickly in a way, my eyes started playing up. I couldn't use the screen at all. I couldn't read at all or even watch television. So it was very difficult and I really resented it because it stopped me doing everything I really loved doing. Then I had an eye operation to try and tighten up some loose muscles in my right eye. And when I took the eye patch off, I had double vision, which was awful. And they said, oh, it'll settle down after a few days. But it didn't. So I wasn't driving, obviously, but every road was a dual carriageway. And every time I went to pick up one thing, it looked like there were 2. So it really was hard to know which one to go for. And it wasn't always the same one. Then I had to wait 4 months of this dreadful time before I could have a second operation. And at the last minute in that one, I had to be woken up. So I was the one deciding how tight the stitches should be. And I think, well, enough said at this point. I didn't have double vision anymore, but I still had the original problems of the nausea and not being able to write or do miniature things. So it was a very difficult time. And Stoicism, as I said, it just hardens you, really. There's nothing in it. I couldn't even see anything good anywhere, really. But one day my daughter, who's a Christian, took me out for lunch. She drove us out. In the car, she played Valley of Vision by Sovereign Grace, which is about how in the deepest wells you can see the stars. Okay. And something really started to melt in my heart that day. It just started. I mean, we both shed tears and nothing was actually said, but lunch was great that day. But after that, I sort of went back into the shell, I think. And I was having a particularly bad day many months later, actually, and I headed for my bed to have a lie down. And on the way, I looked up at my bookshelf and saw this. And because it had got no spine, I didn't know what it was. So I couldn't remember that it was, in fact, a lovely Bible given to me by an elderly lady in 1972 when I left university. And I tried to put it back on the shelf because I wasn't really in the mood for Bible stuff, you know. So I tried to put it back, but my eyes not really working very well. I dropped it. And as I dropped it, this little text fluttered out. And it said, get my glasses, Isaiah chapter 30, verses 20 and 21. So I sort of felt duty-bound to look it up. And I'll read it because I don't want to forget a single word of it. And though the Lord give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet your teacher will not hide himself any more, but your eyes shall see your teacher, and your ears shall hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And that was a moment which I didn't really have any words to describe that moment, but that was the time when the ice finally did melt, and all the years of pain sort of came into focus, like the missing pictures of a jigsaw, missing bits of a jigsaw. I think I got the outside, but I hadn't got the middle. And I didn't really look back after that, but I still, stumble about, and I still have anxious days for all sorts of reasons. But I think, I think we're allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
But the difference is now that I am connected to God and He's connected to me, and I felt totally overwhelmed in a really good way that day. I felt like, I remember the story of the lost sheep from Sunday school. I'm so grateful my parents sent me to Sunday school. They never went to church. I think they just wanted respite from me. And I'd heard the story of the lost sheep, the lost but found sheep. And that day it was me. And I know that God probably did that with thousands of other people the same day. But on that day, I was the one that He found. And my ears heard that message. No, they hadn't. I hadn't been searching for a message, to be honest. I'd been resisting it. But that was the day that He said, come on.
Amazing.
Be my sheep.
Amazing. And so Creator God
Yeah.
is a very personal God. So now if the waves get high and life threatens to overwhelm, where do you go now? You're not stoic anymore.
No. I go straight to this or other Bibles because the Word of God is absolutely there isn't anything in it that you can't find help for. And I always, I think I've been taught that's the place to go and to pray about it. Don't just think, oh, that's nice. It is a personal thing, Rachel. You're right. It becomes a personal thing. And prayer meetings during the week, we can always take our things to these meetings. We know that it's not going to go outside the circle unless we want it to. And just being in the church family, it's just things I didn't have before. I don't know how I ever managed. Well, I didn't manage, to be honest.
So that brings me quite nicely to my final question. So you are a keen member of at least one KYB group.
Yeah.
Some people these days do more than one. So tell me about that. How important is that?
It's vitally important. I look forward to it so much. I remember being asked if I'd join a group, and I was not long after joining the church, and I felt so included. And we do the homework each week, and it's not like homework. It's a treasure store, and it pick up so much of other people, I think. And also, we do books that we're not familiar with, which is great. Books that I probably wouldn't have read. And then other times we do things which are really familiar. You know, these familiar ones, they can hold new lessons every time you read them. So it's been a real joy, KYB, and I'm glad that so many people do it.
And so tell us what you're studying at the moment with your group.
In my particular group, we're doing Hebrews.
Okay, that's a weighty book. That is a fantastic book.
I've got a wonderful book by Stuart Olliott called I Wish Someone Would Tell Me Everything About Hebrews. So I always have a little crib in that before the meeting.
So you're the person that brings out the extra little nuggets.
Well, I mean, I think other people have got that book, but the first time I read it, it really helped me. And I just learned so much of other people. Sometimes it can be just one thing that somebody says and I think, wow, thank you for that, Lord.
And what I find is that KYB is definitely 100% primarily about studying the Bible together and hearing God's voice. But the relationships that are built with the other people in the group during those times of studying the Bible together are very precious, aren't they?
They are, they really are. And it goes beyond the meetings. We can WhatsApp each other, or as we had to do during lockdown when we couldn't see each other. And I think KYB really held a lot of us together in the family at that time. I realise now that actually I've spent much of my life making things smaller. And but now, since that amazing time that God found me, He gave me a great yearning to tell everyone that He puts in my path about Him, and actually to magnify His glory and not miniaturise it.
Trina, thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you for showing us around your house. Thank you for showing us around your houses. It's really been a pleasure and fascinating to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I've loved doing it.